Meghan is a woman of huge ambition and total ruthlessness on her terms, but she is a woman without much talent.
Piers Morgan put it in one word: privacy. Yeah, right.
Apparently this trip wants to be known as Meghan, not as the Duchess.
Yeah.
Because, of course, the Australians know a fraud when they see one.
Many claim that she wasn't in fact inside the United Kingdom and Harry came alone with his children.
Meghan Markle is attempting to distract by showing a series of holiday photos. Her summer.
For 4 straight weeks, the promise was the same. The children must be protected. Their privacy is sacred. She would never put them on display. And then, the very day the King and Queen opened the Commonwealth Games, the pictures landed anyway. The kids, music, the beach, and a grave.
I'd like Charles to have spent time with his grandchildren alone. And I don't think that Harry and Meghan had to be on royal property. That really sticks in the craw.
Tom Bower, the biographer who wrote the definitive book on this couple, has been telling us for years exactly what the word privacy really means to them.
Meghan Markle released photos of her family. She released the photo on the day that King Charles and Queen Camilla were opening the Commonwealth Games. In your opinion, did Markle do this to take away from their majesties? And in your opinion, do you think the King will take a dim view of this?
Start with the timing, because the timing is the whole story. Prince George turned 13 on a Wednesday, a milestone for a future king. And for one day, the spotlight belonged entirely to him. A confident young man about to head off to Eton, photographed with the quiet dignity his parents have made their trademark. The whole country was talking about George, his future, his path to the throne.
That's what's so fascinating. It starts with the book Betrayal, her appearance in Manchester, and it was anger that provoked her. The organisers of that conference for children were absolutely outraged by Meghan's behaviour. They'd been outraged before how she had exploited and used them, but that was the lost. And, of course, that was a bombshell.
And then, barely 24 hours later, as the King and Queen arrived in Glasgow to open the Commonwealth Games, a fresh batch of photographs appeared on the Sussexes' Instagram. A summer photo dump, as they call it. An expression that tells you everything about how casually these images were flung into the world.
But I do think the timing is just odd. You know, it was dropped on a Thursday. Prince George's birthday was on Wednesday. On Thursday, people were still talking about the photos and still talking about Prince George's future when Meghan decides that's the appropriate day to drop photos of her children.
On the surface, just a family holiday. Portugal, a beach, a dog, a plane. Harmless, you might think. But this is exactly the behavior Tom Bower spent an entire book documenting. The instinct to be seen precisely when being seen does the most damage to everyone else.
There is now international revulsion over this decision to go public with the most intimate details of their summer family holiday to once again hit back.
Bower's readers didn't see a holiday album. They saw a move, a calculated one, and the audience saw it, too. One line echoed by thousands. Surprise, surprise. It's George's birthday, so of course Meghan has put out family photos. Predictable every single time.
Well, absolutely, but I mean, that's the whole point about the invasion of privacy. I mean, self-invasion.
Yeah.
So I think the real interest is how low can they go and when will it all explode or implode?
Yeah.
And that's really why I'm fascinated by it, because I think that, you know, the manipulation of the media by them, by the constant drip of we've got to be recognized, we want people to write about us, but we don't want it to be our privacy to be invaded, is just priceless.
Another viewer put it more darkly still. She posted these the moment the Commonwealth Games opened, and that was the whole intention. This is a pattern Tom Bower has been mapping for years, and it never once misses. A good day for the real royals becomes a launch pad for the Sussexes. And this time, the launch pad was uglier than anyone expected.
this succession of pictures, and there you'll see all of these pictures have a particular meaning. All of them are designed to clap back at certain elements of our coverage over the past few weeks. She knows exactly what she's doing here, including the weird cosplaying of Princess Diana and the even weirder decision to try and overshadow Prince George's 13th birthday with new pictures of Archie. So all of that is totally off.
But it wasn't the beach shots that turned people's stomachs. It was one image in particular, and it's the one even her defenders went quiet over. First, the word that has followed this couple around like a shadow: privacy. This is the very heart of Tom Bower's case.
When the public announcement of both King Charles's and Kate's cancer was made, Harry was, I think it was at a public function in LA, and made no mention of it either. And sent no commiserations or public wish you recover as well. So I mean, there's an appalling narcissism there, an appalling self-interest. It's self-love. That, especially for Meghan, everything is about self-love.
Yes,
which is become a sort of her survival instinct. Everything is about her.
For years, Bower has argued that privacy was never the real goal. It was a shield, a word pulled out whenever it was convenient. Music, and quietly dropped the second there was something to be gained from being seen. It's a central thread of his book, and a point he has hammered again and again in public, lined the last few weeks up against Bower's argument, and it becomes almost impossible to fault him.
Meghan has perfected the art of being a nasty piece of work from she was a little girl. Of course she's trying to rain on their parade. And of course she's trying to establish ascendancy over the royal family. Anything you can do, I can do better.
Think about what we were told. For a solid month, the message pushed through the friendly press was that she was the one determined to shield the children. She was the one who would never release a photo of them with the king. That was the story. That was the halo. And then came the dump, the children front and center. Not the careful, dignified, occasional portrait that William and Catherine release on a birthday or at Christmas, but their most intimate, unguarded moments served up to millions of followers.
Give it 5 years, and he will be back in England with his ginger tail between his legs, leaving her in Hollywood with 2 babies, and she will sell the soul of everything to do with what she's known and what she's done, including those kids, to make money. And it's just a really sad way to describe it. And if you cut it down, if you look at this book, I tell you a story. It's relevant to what you've written. You talked about that tea time sort of conciliatory meeting that went wrong.
I think it's in balance now. It depends how they behave.
The audience clocked the contradiction instantly. One comment, liked by well over 1,000 people, said it more bluntly than any commentator could. Someone please explain what the word private actually means to these two. Another simply said, we want privacy, dumb prince. Music. And here's the sharpest cut of all. The single most liked reaction across every video on this story.
So it is a little odd. It's a little just thirsty. Back to me. I need the attention. Come on. It's just, I feel kind of sad for them. I feel sad for them all. They're all a little bit desperate.
Well, I feel sad for the children, Paula, because I think, like Lee Cohen, he's not a particularly rude guy.
Harry has spent years accusing other people of dining out on his mother's memory, cashing in on Diana. And yet, exactly as Tom Bower has argued, what has this couple done for years, if not precisely that? The audacity, one viewer wrote, is beyond despicable. That's a privacy lie in a single sentence. You cannot spend 4 weeks lecturing the world about protecting your children, then make those same children the centerpiece of a content drop timed to a royal milestone.
These are people who are famous, seek to influence us, seek to profit from their fame, and seek in one way or to manipulate their image as they stay up the greasy pole. And my whole profession has been to pump the bubble, to actually pump the balloon and show the truth, rather than their conjectured story which they would like us all to accept. So, of course, I don't deny at all I don't like her. I think she is a person who's done huge damage to the royal family has been deeply, deeply inaccurate on many issues.
As Bower has always said, you can't have it both ways. This week, she tried anyway, and where she tried it is what curdled everything. Music. Before we get to grave, we need to name a game because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Tom Bower described this exact dynamic long before this week. The compulsion to top, to overshadow, to make sure something louder lands on the very same day. Anything you can do, I can do music better.
She would telephone or text the photographers and the journalists to tell them where she would be and when she could be spotted. So she encouraged the paparazzi. And don't let's forget, it wasn't the paparazzi that killed her in the tunnel. It was a drunken driver employed by Mohammed Fayed. And that was the cause of the death. And she wasn't wearing a safety belt. So, But Harry doesn't want to know any of that truth. That's the trouble with Harry. He just likes, because in his simple way, the paparazzi murdered my mother. Well, it wasn't as simple as that at all.
The King and Queen open the games. Look what I'm doing. Here are pictures of my family. George is photographed sitting in a cockpit. Suddenly, there's little Archie seemingly in a cockpit, too. The Wales release a grown-up birthday portrait. Same news cycle. Out come the Sussex children. Conveniently grown in. Coincidence you might music, say, and once maybe, but the audience has been keeping score for years, and they no longer buy it.
And you're saying keep kids off the internet, protect children from the internet, while you're exposing your children without their consent to vicious strangers online.
Absolutely. I mean, that I was going to say, that was absolutely, and of course she's been doing it constantly. The use of her children, as I document in the book very clearly, is unbelievable. And it's always Lilibet, much more than Archie. It's always the exploitation of Lilibet and the coy shot, but it is terrible. But of course we haven't mentioned her attempt to re-enter the jam market.
One viewer joked that the royal family must have a running bet on how many minutes it takes Meghan to photo dump after a big event. Nearest guess wins. And Bower's read push for years is blunt. This is about ascendancy, about refusing to let anyone else have a clean moment in the sun, raining on everybody's parade. The tragedy of it, the thing that makes it almost sad rather than clever, is that it backfires every time. The more she posts to compete, the better the Wales children look by comparison. Always well-dressed, hair always brushed, poised, cared for. Music, as one commenter put, there is simply no comparison. And every time Meghan tries to force one, she loses it.
I agree with many of the chums on here that I think there's certain things that should remain private. I know for a fact, obviously, that Louis, Princess Charlotte, and of course Prince George have all done the same thing privately. And I don't know about you, I think anything where there's a little bit of thing like that is a bit odd, isn't it? You just do not want to necessarily share it. It all depends on what you want to do from it.
But this particular drop went a step further than competition, because this time she didn't just borrow a royal milestone. She borrowed a grave. Here's the image that stopped people cold. Among the holiday snaps was a photograph believed to have been taken at Althorp, the Spencer family's ancestral estate in Northamptonshire, and the place where Princess Diana is buried on a small island in the middle of an ornamental lake. That resting place was designed to be unreachable. Diana's own brother, Charles Spencer, wrote that its remoteness was deliberate, the water acting as a buffer, the thick mud, a further line of defense, a shield against, in his own words, the insane and the ghoulish. And that phrase has become almost unbearably ironic.
Well, I think that's absolutely right. And it's very interesting that we never discovered what actually happened in Sydney at that very expensive Meet Meghan dinner. Clearly, they made sure that nobody was able to publish anything embarrassing and all the rest. And then she exposed herself in Geneva and gets a wallop of muck, self-made. So that's her problem. How does she find a venue? And, that is actually, if I could say finally, what I do think is actually her tragedy. If she had stayed in Britain, if she just accepted the rules, she would have been a much-loved member of the royal family. Mm-hmm. She would have gone to open a hospital or a children's clinic or she would have been seen on a few times a year at various venues.
The photograph appears to show Harry and the children from behind, walking a grassy, tree-lined path carrying large bouquets, making their way, it's understood, toward Diana's grave. And within hours, the soft-focus framing arrived courtesy of People magazine, the outlet so many now regard as the couple's personal mouthpiece. This is precisely what Tom Bower has warned about for years. Music. The point where private grief and public branding stop being separate things at all. And that is when the internet turned, not the beat shots. This music, one, the most like comment, didn't mince words. She desecrated Princess Diana's grave. And using a person's final resting place for fame and fortune is unbearable.
It's ghoulish. That's the only word that can explain Prince Harry and Meghan Markle sharing a private picture of their so-called private children, Archie and Lily, on their so-called private vigil to lay flowers at Princess Diana's grave for the first time. No wonder there is now international revulsion.
Another turned Charles Spencer's own line straight back on them. The insane and the ghoulish, that word ghoulish, appeared, music again and again from strangers who never coordinated, all reaching for it independently. And the human logic underneath the anger is hard to argue with. Ordinary people visit the graves of their parents and grandparents all the time. They bring flowers. They stand in silence. What they don't do, as one viewer said, is bring a camera, pose the children, and publish it to the world like a fun day out. Which raises a question people are now asking out loud. Who allowed this?
Within hours, predictably, confirmation from their propagandists at People magazine, who tried to paint this as some type of beautiful moment, but within it confirmed that it was indeed Althorp. The photo, and just to clarify, in case you don't realise, Harry and Meghan briefed directly to People magazine, so this has come from their team. And People reports one image shows Harry, Archie, and Lily from behind as they walk down a grassy path lined with trees and hedges. The photo is believed to have been taken at Althorp, the Spencer family's ancestral estate where Diana grew up. Harry and Archie are both seen carrying large bouquets, prompting speculation that the family may have visited Diana's burial site, which is located on an island in the middle of the estate's oval lake.
The swimsuit and to what Bower believes it reveals about her real state of mind. Because there was another photograph in that dump. Meghan standing on a beach in a black swimsuit, and royal watchers spotted it in seconds. A near copy of one of Princess Diana's most famous looks. Music, the same cut, the same pose, the same silhouette that was considered rather daring for a royal in its day. One off, and you'd shrug, but it isn't. It's a documented pattern stretching back years. Outfit after outfit, echoing Diana. The reaction was visceral. Commentators called it psycho-stalker behavior. Viewers called it creepy, obsessive, unhinged. One line summed up the exhaustion of thousands. Megs, you're not Diana in any shape, form, or way.
While at Althorp, the Sussexes are also believed to have spent time with other members of the Spencer family. Princess Diana's grave is located on a small island in the middle of Althorp's oval lake and is not accessible to the public. Her brother Charles Spencer wrote in his book that its remoteness was intentional, with the lake acting as a buffer against the interventions of the insane and ghoulish, the thick mud presenting a further line of defence. But indeed, I would now use Charles Spencer's words directly to describe the acts of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. You too are insane and ghoulish. You too have no respect for Princess Diana's resting place.
Here's where Tom Bower goes deeper than anyone. He doesn't read this as simple admiration. In Bower's account a couple, the Diana echo is strategic, a hold over Harry, a way of reminding him of the woman he lost, as if to say, I'm the one your mother wanted you to marry, I'm still here. And why reach for that old trick now? Because, and this is Bower's whole thesis, if the old tricks were still working, she wouldn't need to keep using them. You don't have to keep reminding a man of his mother if you already have him exactly where you want him.
A lot of people believe, and you seem to suggest it, that this was her purposefully cosplaying Princess Diana. So Stephanie Sidley, for example, writing, Meghan Markle is wearing the same cut swimsuit Princess Diana was famous for. The Royal Grift describing it as absolutely mental, and Meghan's moles saying that it's psycho stalker behavior. Again, Paul, if this were a one-off, you'd probably give the person benefit of the doubt, right? But given this is now like such a trend, I do believe it's purposeful. Do you?
Of course. Of course it is. We could go through the last, 8-10 years of all the outfits she's copied of Diana's. And, it's actually quite, what's the word? Edible and weird. It's almost as if she's trying to remind Harry, I'm mummy.
The very fact that the Diana playbook is back out, the argument goes, is a tell, a sign that something in that marriage isn't as settled as the happy family photos are working so hard to suggest. And that word happy matters because all of this collided with a far bigger problem they cannot photo dump their way out of. To understand why the royal family is reacting the way it is, which is mostly by saying nothing at all, you have to go back to the beginning. And here, Tom Bower's reporting flatly contradicts the story the couple have sold the world. The version we're usually told, a cold, unwelcoming family throws out a newcomer.
That's exactly. I'm the woman that your mother sent you to marry. I'm embodying her spirit. It's all just
So wrong.
kind of ooky. But the other thing about the Althorp's visit, Dan, is that they're not particularly close with Diana's brother. He did get married in the States and they were not there, nor do I believe they were invited.
Look, it's a relationship of convenience for both sides, though, because
absolutely,
Charles Spencer is certainly not close with Prince William.
Bower tells the opposite. In music, his account. Meghan was welcomed as no incoming wife ever had been. Invited to spend Christmas with the family before the wedding, something that had simply never happened. Treated with extraordinary latitude, given music, help, given advisors, given the benefit of every doubt. And how, Bower asks, was that welcome repaid with what he describes as manufactured offense? Problems where none needed to exist, the flashpoints, Tyrion among them, that appeared from nowhere, and then the Oprah interview and the Netflix series, which many in Britain felt didn't just air grievances, but tore at the reputation of the late Queen herself.
Meghan was meant to come across and pose as the royal couple in Birmingham towards the end of the week, bringing the children, the whole thing. I think the King will be very, very wary of meeting Harry now. He'll say he hasn't got any space in his diary because Harry has shown himself to be a man of absolutely not only no judgment, but a person who is surrounded by very poor advisors.
Yesterday or the day before, because this has been a chaotic few days, someone has said, do you think Meghan will... We expected Harry to attend or to come out here solo, but the rumor was from Harry's team, Meghan might still meet him for the Invictus event on Friday. The kids would, might still come around the end of the week so that they could go to Althorp to see the grave of Diana, because these two love nothing more than wearing the skin of this poor woman.
At first, the family gave grace. She's new. She misunderstands the customs. Then the friction kept coming, and the mood curdled into something colder. The sense among royal watchers now isn't fury. It's fatigue, mightily fed up, as one put it, but refusing to be drawn into the topping game, because retaliation is her weapon, not theirs. And then there was the word that dwarfed all the others. Silenced. She sat down and told the world she'd been silenced after a globe-spanning documentary, a book, and primetime interviews on the biggest platforms on earth.
Nobody ever asked them, do you regret having lied to Oprah Winfrey? Do you regret having lied on Netflix and all the magazine interviews? Don't you see what a terrible mistake you've made? And are you prepared to apologize? Oof. That, I think, is what we're waiting to hear.
That's so funny that you mentioned that, because when I was with some fans of the royal family, supporters of the royal family earlier this week at Buckingham Palace, they did say, I don't want Harry back, but if I had to take him back, he would need to apologize to his family publicly, and he would have to apologize to the United Kingdom.
As one viewer said, whoever was in charge of silencing her did a spectacularly bad job. And as an irony Bower's work keeps circling back to, too, the interview meant to expose the family's coldness may, in the end, have held up a mirror and shown the world exactly who was doing the wounding. But money doesn't care about mirrors, and the money is where the real pressure is now.
Well, I think the victim worked for opera, and America bought into it for about a year.
Mm-hmm.
And then the New York Times switched and others switched, and they became bored.
Wall
with the
Street
victim.
Journal, too.
They became bored by the victim pleading, especially when they finally realized that the original revelations about her bullying at Kensington Palace were replicated and were true because it was happening in America as well.
Mm-hmm.
And you just saw the image of the woman and thought, how can she also be the beast in Montecito? What happens behind closed doors? So it's a credibility problem they have.
Here's the part that ties the whole week together, and it may outlast every photograph for years. The couple's central demand has been armed taxpayer-funded security whenever they're in the UK. The danger, we're told, is so severe they couldn't possibly bring the children without it. That has been the drumbeat, the music grievance that never ends. And then they came anyway, quietly in a blacked-out car, in and out of country, music up and down the motorways onto private estates, and nobody knew where they were staying. The British music press, who can find anyone, couldn't get a single photograph of Meghan or the children on that trip. The whole operation was, by any measure, completely secure, which is exactly why the audience pounced. Music.
And that was it. She wanted to be the star. And of course she failed. She failed on her own terms because the highest she got was Suits, which was, a small program, nothing very important, but then became the star by getting married to Harry, a global star. And instead of being happy with that and taking the terms, she was determined everything had to be on her terms. And that was worse than narcissism. That was destructive. She's an agent of destruction. And that's what I don't forgive her for that, because what she did in the Oprah Winfrey interview, what she said against the royal family, what she said against Britain, everything was just so unfair and wrong. And it was really a dreadful thing what she did and continues to do.
One viewer said flatly, "Those pictures prove they can go to UK without security." Another guess, "They didn't need it after all then." If a man can fly in and out of a country unseen and untouched, music. The case for round-the-clock armed protection rather collapses on its own, and the reality on the ground makes it worse. Britain is currently protecting an unprecedented 9 former prime ministers at once, with trained firearms officers stretched thin. A source close to the process put it plainly, this case is not all about Harry. There are bigger, more urgent threats. Music, and that line stunned the most, because as Tom Bower's entire portrait of him argues, Harry has long behaved as though everything is. Which brings us to why this summer feels less like confidence and more like desperation. Look at the wider picture. The lifestyle brand meant to be the great commercial triumph has, by many accounts, music stalled, with reports of unsold stock gathering dust. The big streaming deal that once looked unshakable has cooled dramatically, and hanging over all of it is a courtroom defeat against the Daily Mail, with the very real prospect of a substantial legal bill to follow.
Insane for him to argue it's not safe enough when the likelihood that they would provide armed guards for Meghan and the children is, in my opinion, incredibly high. Do you disagree with that?
I do.
Oh.
Because the way that is calculated is there a threat?
Right.
And there's no threat to Meghan or her children. They've never shown a threat. The only threat has been that they'll be photographed by paparazzi, which is, of course, what they want.
Well, which is what Meghan does 24 hours a day in the house.
Exactly. And summons people to spot her at a restaurant or somewhere.
Yeah.
So I think, on the contrary, I think they won't allow them to abuse the system. And of course, the reason they want the armed protection is, first of all, it saves them a huge amount of money, because if they actually did come, they'd need at least a team of 6, which would cost a fortune.
So when the pretty holiday pictures appeared, the beach, the dog, the stage, togetherness, a lot of people didn't see a couple thriving. They saw one trying very hard to look like it. As one commenter said, when things actually go well for Meghan, we're the first to hear about it. And this is Tom Bower's oldest point of all. With this couple, music, there's almost always a transaction underneath the sentiment. Future content, a future payday taken personally. So they can always say, these were just our private memories. Music, We simply chose to share them. But the whole point, the argument goes, is that the only reason to make the trip at all was to come home with the...
He's tarnished by losing a case which has cost them at least £50 million in costs. For Harry now, it's downhill faster than he can imagine.
I mean, I've said for some time, Paula, that I think the pictures that they need to secure for the documentary next year do not actually have to be filmed by a camera crew. Because, of course, one of the main reasons why Netflix was so happy with the Harry and Meghan documentary, which, remember, was a hit. It's the only show that has been a hit as part of their Netflix package, was because Harry and Meghan had to, and it was for the big paycheck, not 100 mil, but still a very big paycheck, had to guarantee that they were going to open up their personal photo album. And we saw a lot as a result. Remember, there were the videos on the Freedom Flight, and there were the videos even on the night of the engagement. All of them were included in the documentary. So my contention is that all of these photos and videos for the documentary will have been taken personally by Harry and Meghan, which they believe gives them some type of out in terms of, oh no, well, we weren't really commercializing the visit.
So here's where it leaves us. For years, we were sold the idea of a couple who wanted, above all, to be left alone. This summer, they showed us the truth on a beach, at a birthday, and at a graveside, all timed to the minute. Tom Bower saw it coming a long time ago, and every photograph in that dump reads like a page torn straight out of the book he wrote. Privacy was never the point. The point was the picture. 2 videos on your screen pull the whole pattern apart. Watch them next.